When her pilot friend Mike first suggested to Kucki Low she take up flying from the passenger seat of a Piper 140, she said, "I don't think so. I can barely reach the control pedals or see over the dash." Well, life has a funny way of forcing you to follow your trail of joy. 200 plus flying hours later, Austrian-born Irmgard van Gerlach, whose nickname is Kucki, became South Africa's first female commercial airline pilot. Stay with us for fascinating tales from an aviation pioneer who is still experiencing high-flying adventures in the air and on the ground. Happy are those who dream big dreams. Good to be here with you today and with Austrian-born Kucki Low. She is a woman of many talents. The first female to get a private pilot's license in South Africa and the first female to fly cargo jets and other daunting aircraft. When Kucki had close to 4,000 flying hours, she left her career behind and moved to Canada, where she continues to expand her horizons and follow her passions, and they are many.
Yes.
Who gave you your spirit of adventure?
I think probably my mum did, and my grandmother. My grandmother was a real adventurer. I mean, they immigrated to what was then German Southwest Africa in 1932, and she flew with me when I had my private pilot license.
Your grandmother?
My grandmother at 82 did a 10-hour flight with me, and loved it.
How amazing, because she probably came from the horse and cart days.
She did. She did, and that's, you know, I was thinking afterwards, when it didn't sort of strike me at the time, but if you know, afterwards I was thinking, it must have been amazing for her, because when she immigrated in 1932, their transportation was horse and cart, and here she was flying over the same countryside with her granddaughter in a single-engine aircraft with her granddaughter as a pilot. It must have been an amazing experience for her, but she was wonderful. Getting her into the plane was a bit tough, because it was a Piper, so she had to climb onto the wing, and we had to get her in. But once she was in, she was a delightful passenger.
And did she say to you, "Honey, do you know what you're doing?"
No, she said that before. She was very reluctant to. I phoned her up because I wanted to build up some hours. So I phoned her up and I said, "Oma, how about I pick you up on the farm in South Africa, that was, and fly you back home, rather than you going with South African Airways." And I had a lot of convincing to do for her to realize that she was safe. Little did she know I only had about 80 hours at the time.
Oh, a detail.
Minor detail. But she agreed and she paid for it. And for me, it was a 20-hour round trip, which was just phenomenal at the time, you know, because you're always trying to build up hours when you're getting your license, and always trying to find scouring the countryside for anybody that will let you fly them anywhere, so that you can log the hours and they can pay for the gas and stuff.
Were there any aviators in your family? Any pilots?
No.
Your father a photographer?
My father a photographer. I'd never even been on my radar as a possibility. But that's how life works, you know. And I think the exciting thing is when you see something that excites you, go for it, you know.
Sure.
It doesn't, yeah.
Take me back to your early days, Austria.
Yeah.
With your mammy?
With mummy, yeah.
Mummy? Who was your parents' friend?
No,
start
she was
at the beginning.
she was, you know, it was a difficult time. It was after the war. My parents worked two weeks of the month at the PX in Salzburg, so they couldn't really have children with them. So we lived with what I called mummy, like a, you know, she was my mummy, my mother as far as I was concerned. And then when my parents were in St. Wolfgang, we would go get dressed up and go and visit them and you know, spend some time with them. But it was always like you were visiting. I mean, it never felt like home. They didn't feel like my parents to me.
And one day you had to leave Mummy.
And one day I had to leave Mummy, yeah.
That must have been a little bit wrenching.
Yeah, I think that was probably one of the sort of, you know, I mean, as a kid you don't realize quite what's going on. I mean, the way it happened was really, you know, traumatic for me. But then when you're 7 years old, I mean, everything is exciting, and you're going into a new place and you're going on a big boat, and it was You know, you
Right,
sort
not
of
on a big plane, on a big
big
boat
and
to
you-
Africa.
to Africa, and you don't realize. I mean, you don't realize it's forever. You know, at the time, you don't realize that you're never going to see Mummy again.
What kind of culture shock did you go through? Austria to South
it was
Africa.
actually
What
funny.
kind of culture shock did your parents go through?
My parents, I think, went through a real culture shock. I mean, my mother was Viennese. She grew up in Vienna. She loved opera. She loved theater. She was an actress. And for her, I cannot imagine what it must have been like for her to get off, you know, when the boat docked and she looked at sand, nothing.
And
Dust, sand, no greenery. I mean, Walvish Bay at the time was really windswept, and the houses were on stilts, and it was pretty. It must have been unbelievably for her.
Why South Africa?
Because my dad's parents had immigrated in 1932, and he always wanted to go back to the family because they had left him behind when he was a kid because he had very severe diabetes. So he always wanted to be back, united with the family. And that's why my mother never wanted to go. But, you know, that was still a time when my dad said, we're going, and that was it. You know?
And you lost your parents at a very young age.
Yeah.
Dad dropped dead at the bridge table.
Yes.
That's was my father's dream, to drop dead at the bridge, doing something he loved madly.
Well, exactly. You know, thinking back now, it was probably really, you know, it's a really nice way to go. I mean, we all have to go at some stage. Mm-hmm. And that probably was for him. But for me, it was hard to...
I'm sure, to lose him because he inspired you and taught you to take
Yes, and we've
pictures.
been really close, and you know, particularly after my mum passed away, my dad and I, you know, I sort of felt like I had to really look after my dad.
Did your mom commit suicide?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did you know, as a young girl, did they tell you?
Oh yeah, I found her.
Okay.
I found her was the first one to walk in.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. I realized what had gone on. I mean, I wasn't that young. I was, you know, 16.
So the truth was told, and on you went. And when did you get hooked on flying?
I got hooked in flying when I was 22, and I was working for my uncle who had bought our photography. We had a photography business in Walvish Bay, which is in Namibia on the coast. And my uncle had asked me to come back. He had bought it when my father passed away because we were minors and the business was auctioned off and my uncle had bought it. And then I stayed for another 3 months to help him get the business going and so on. And then I went to Munich in Germany to a photography school. And then he phoned me and said, oh, Kucki, can you come up for 3 months to help me because my photographer's going on holiday and so on. So I went back to Walvish Bay, and the first weekend I was there, he said, oh, you know, by the way, Kucki, I booked a plane and a pilot for you to go up and take some air photographs of Walvish Bay. And that was it for me. Mm-hmm. It was the most unbelievable experience.
What was it, do you think? Is he the one who said to you, let me fly you into the sunset?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That would do it.
That would do it.
So you weren't afraid at all? But you were little.
No, I wasn't afraid. I was so excited. I thought this was the most magical experience. I mean, you were taking off, and it felt like you were sitting in this little space capsule, and as the aircraft sort of took off, you know, you could see the scenery below you becoming smaller and smaller, and it was magical, totally magical.
And speaking of smaller and smaller, you are not that tall.
No.
So did you have to sit on a pillow?
I always had to sit on a pillow because I could never see over the panel. And I was, there's a picture in my book about that as well. I always, because my students thought it was so funny, I always used to carry my cushions with me. Mm-hmm. And because I couldn't, first of all, I had problems reaching the pedals. So I had one behind me and I sat on one. And my students always thought that was hilarious because you give conversions on different aircraft. So you go from one plane to the other to teach. And I would always walk around the airport with my cushions under my arm.
And who taught you to fly? First time?
The first time was the pilot that took me up to take the aerial photographs. He was also an instructor, and he would fly into Walvish Bay every 2 weeks to teach students there. And when we, you know, after he'd flown me into the sunset, which was the most unbelievable experience, he said to me, you know, when we climbed out, he said, you know, I've never seen anybody be that excited about flying. Why don't you learn to fly? And I thought, never even thought about it. Why not? Go for it.
And how long does it take you to get a private license?
40 hours.
How many hours? 40 hours.
Minimum 40 hours. You
Right.
can take longer, shorter, but
Sure.
minimum 40 hours, yeah.
So in those 40 hours, did you have a few bumps and a few scares, or were you a natural?
No, I was not a natural. No, I was not a
Is
natural.
there such a thing?
There probably is. I mean, if there's a natural, I think my husband actually was very much more of a natural pilot than I was. He was a really good pilot. And when he came for his first lesson, I mean, he knew exactly what he wanted to do, how it was going to work, what, you know, whereas most people come to for their first lesson, they have no idea what to expect.
Right.
But no, I wasn't a natural. I just loved it.
And did they tell you about your solo flight when you were going to solo, or do they surprise you?
In my case, they surprised me because we had all packed up and we thought we were going home for the evening. It was a really windy day, and it was about 6 o'clock in the evening, and I thought we were all packing up, and the instructor came over to me and said, I want you to go solo. And I said, what? He said, yeah, it's beautiful and calm, go for it. And he walked out to the plane with me, you know, got on the wing, said, have a good time, shut the latch, and off I went.
What plane was it?
Piper 140.
The Piper 140.
Yeah. And it was an amazing feeling. I mean, the first time in the plane by yourself is just the most amazing feeling. I mean, you can't believe that you're actually doing this. You know, you're flying and you downwind and you look down and you're thinking, where's my instructor? Where am I?
Mm-hmm. And can I land this
and can I do
small
this?
plane
Yeah.
without him
But, yeah.
or her? Well,
But
there were no hers.
Without him, but it went really well, and it was a nice, calm evening, and it was amazing. And then, of course, there's a big party afterwards, the solo party, and you have to drink a concoction that, maybe not today anymore, but they used to make a concoction that they put whatever liquor they could find in there, and then you have to drink it down.
So you get slightly tipsy, but after all, you
It's
soloed.
it's a good celebration.
Kucki Low, my guest. This is Kucki, your pilot speaking. We'll return and talk more.